Ladies and gentlemen, this is an Atlanta favorite, one of my favorite comedians. He's about to move away. I want everyone to put their hands together, separate them, and reunite them very fast for the very funny Mr. Mike Kaiser.
Hey guys, give it up for Rob, your host. Yeah, Rob's fun. So I work in a library here in the city of Atlanta. It's an African American history library. I'm the only white guy who works there. And what I do is people donate their records and then I organize them so people can learn from them. And recently I've been going through the records of this organization that monitored hate groups. So they collected the newspapers of the Ku Klux Klan and stuff like that. So if you were to come into my workplace tomorrow morning, you'd walk in and see black folks everywhere. And if you went up to the top floor, you'd find me, the only white guy who works there, casually perusing through mountains of white supremacist literature. It get pretty awkward. Trying to explain, draft most of those newspapers. It wasn't me. But I do like living in Atlanta. I think is interesting because we have to deal with race differently than people in other parts of the country. We have the history of the civil rights movement here, for example. And every day when I drive to work at the library, I have to drive by the Martin Luther King Center, which every time I do that, I'm reminded that it's administered by the National Park Service. There are park rangers that work there. I always think about those guys, you know, because they probably wanted to be park rangers their entire lives. Envision themselves living out in Yellowstone or Yosemite, one of the most beautiful places in the country. But instead, they work in a museum at the corner of Auburn Avenue and Boulevard, shooing homeless people away and directing idiot white people to the gift shop where they can attempt to mitigate their white guilt with a DVD purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, I think what I'm trying to say is that those park rangers had a dream. And Martin Luther King killed it. Okay. I will accept applause on that joke. I'm not comfortable with those applause. But I will accept the applause. And I feel like I try to be a keen observer of race. I've had some issues. I used to date this Indian girl, and she came from a very conservative immigrant family. She was expected to get an arranged marriage. It's part of the reason why we broke up. Obviously, her marriage did not get arranged to me. But I always thought if it had, it would have required a really awkward conversation between me and her mother, you know? Because she'd had to ask me, Mike, what caste are you? And I've had to say, well, I'm white, as you can plainly see. So, whatever the top one is, I don't know, I guess I'm right above that somewhere. Now, I don't tell that joke because I think white people are better than Indian people, not at all. I tell that joke because my ex-girlfriend's parents fucking hated me. They did not approve of their daughter dating a white guy, and people would often ask me if my parents were okay with me dating an Indian girl. Of course they were. My parents are white. They're held accountable for their racism. That's one of those, you just got to give it to me at the end, because that's true. That's fucking true. But I got a cool girlfriend now, much better. She's Brazilian. Guys, I'm not up here trying to create artificial racial hierarchies. That's not my bag. But Brazilian is way above Indian. Way above Indian. It just is. I didn't do this. Back when we were just Pangea and we were all one people, I didn't make those splits that would ultimately lead to a super hot race of Brazilian women that I'm now tapped into. I don't make the evolutionary decisions, I just benefit from them. But like after our first date, I think it was our second date, I was dropping her off at her apartment complex. I hadn't parked the car, I was just sitting there, and a security guard from her complex came driving up in a golf cart on my side of the car, and he was like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I was like, "Oh, it's not a big deal, I'm just dropping her off." And he was like, "Well, in that case, what the hell are you doing? You need to park this car, walk her to her door, go inside of her apartment, and make sure she gets to bed okay." And I was like, "Can you help me?" I think it just did. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So I parked the car and we were walking in, and then he came looping back in his golf cart, clearly having realized he may have just facilitated a sexual assault. He was like, "Hey man, maybe you should just leave her at her door." And I was like, "Too late, pig, I'm in, let's do this." I don't know if that guy is like a product of the worst security guard training ever. Where it's like, if you see a young lady getting dropped off late at night at her apartment, better make sure the guy she's with gets in there. We have a 100% tuck-in policy at this apartment complex. If the guy has a mustache, you get time and a half. I'll leave you guys with this one. I used to be a teacher just a few years ago. It was really cool for all the kids to say, "Holla." My kids would say it all the time. It was super disruptive in my classroom. I had to come up with a way to prevent them from saying it. I always found it worked best if I made it cost them something. So my plan was if they said it, they owed me a quarter. And if they didn't have a quarter, I took one of their shoes, put it in the back of the room. That way they had to come deal with me when I dismissed class, you know. Naturally, I called this policy the holla cost. Yeah, it worked great, too. Until one day my principal poked her head in the door and just saw this big pile of shoes. In the back of the room with a banner that read, "The Holocaust. This classroom's final solution." Now, I appreciate you guys kind of sticking with me through that closing Holocaust joke. You're to be commended for that. Sometimes people don't really enjoy it. I did that joke last weekend, and this girl came up to me after the show and was like, "Hey, I was really offended by what you said." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "The Holocaust joke?" And like, I didn't really know what to say. So I just denied that it ever happened. All right, guys, my name is Mike Kaiser. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.